Yes, so today's Heritage Talk connects to our Root and Branch exhibition, which we curated in partnership with the Probation Service of England and Wales. This project has been a key piece of work for us for the past couple of years at Englesea Brook, but it particularly dominated 2023 as research and development really got off the ground. And we are pleased to say that the exhibition launched at Englesea Brook on the 23rd of August 2023, and that it is now travelling to different faith and heritage venues throughout England and Wales. This weekend is leaving St John the Baptist Church of England Church in Cardiff, and it will be opening at Willesden Jewish Cemetery in London on Monday the 15th of January. In addition to the exhibition, we created a Root and Branch WordPress website where you can explore the exhibition in more detail, and you can access that through the QR code on screen, as well as through the web address at the bottom of the screen. Now, today's talk will explore the historical development of the Probation Service in more detail, including the origin of the police court missions through the advocacy of Frederick Rayner, who had witnessed the poverty connected to alcohol consumption. It will also explore the power of just 5 shillings and the work of the primitive Methodists in London's East End to help lads on probation. I just want to add a brief content warning. This talk will cover some sensitive issues, in particular alcohol addiction, and there will be a brief mention of suicide. Now, before I get into the historic detail, I just need to explain how this project came about. And this was through a chance visit to the museum in July 2021 by Sonia Flynn, who at that time was the Chief Probation Officer for England and Wales. Methodism, including primitive Methodism, has been closely linked throughout its history with the temperance movement, which campaigned against the consumption of alcohol. In Englesea Brook Chapel, as you can see from this photograph, there is a timeline of the temperance movement, which particularly caught Sonia's attention when she visited. However, she noticed that something was missing from the timeline, and that was the origin of the Probation Service. Following her visit, the Englesea Brook staff team had several meetings with Sonia and others from the Probation Service to see if a joint project would be feasible, through which we would explore the historic connections between the Probation Service and primitive Methodism. Once we received funding from the Association of Independent Museums New Stories, New Audiences programme, we were ready to develop an exhibition that told the story of the Probation Service's origins out of the temperance movement and its links to primitive Methodism and other Christian denominations. However, as the origin of the Probation Service had not been explored in any great detail before, a lot of research was required in order to bring this exhibition to fruition. So in January of 2023, I began a 6-month research process. This took me to the National Justice Museum in Nottingham, which holds the Frederick Rayner Foundation archive. This turned out to be a very important collection, documenting the Probation Service's origin. I also made a couple of research trips to London, where I visited Lambeth Palace Library. The photograph on the screen is Lambeth Palace itself. The library is a very modern building and is not as photogenic. I also visited London Metropolitan Archives. The London Metropolitan Archives was of particular interest to Englesea Brook because it holds the archives of the Whitechapel Primitive Methodist Mission, which employed probation officers in the 1920s and 30s to supervise lads on probation. In the 1930s, the Whitechapel Mission established Windy Ridge Probation Hostel, a countryside home that aided the rehabilitation of lads by teaching them practical skills like gardening and farming. I was also very generously sent digital copies of archival documents by the White Ribbon Association, formerly the British Women's Temperance Association, who in the late 1800s recognised the need for female police court missionaries to help women in courts, police stations and prisons. Now, the first person I need to introduce in this history is Frederick Rayner. Frederick Rayner was born on the 19th of October 1836 in Windsor, into a family of churchgoers. His father, George, was a journeyman stonemason, and his mother, Susanna, kept a coffee house. In 1851, Rayner left school and started work at the Windsor Express, most likely as a print devil, which meant an apprentice. By 1859, he was fully qualified as a printer and was employed by Gilbert and Rivington ecclesiastical printers in Holborn, London. It was while working and living in Holborn that he saw much of the misery around the police courts, memories of which clearly stuck with him for the rest of his life, because by 1878 he had moved out of London and was working for the Hertfordshire Mercury. Rayner was heavily involved with the Church of England Temperance Society, starting 2 branches of the society in Hertford and the surrounding area. In 1876, with the memory of the poverty he had seen connected to alcohol consumption and surrounding the police courts in London still clearly in mind, Frederick Rayner knew that something needed to be done to ease this suffering. As a Church of England Temperance Society volunteer, he wrote to the Society's head office, arguing that help must be provided for those appearing before the courts on charges of drunkenness, because it frequently became a vicious cycle that once someone was sentenced once, they would be sentenced again, and they would never actually given help to combat their addiction. Enclosed with Rayner's letter was a money order for 5 shillings, which he stated he was donating for the purpose of beginning the work he proposed in his letter to help those in the police courts. And just 2 years later, in 1878, the first police court missionary, George Nelson, was appointed, closely followed by the second missionary, William Batchelor. Nelson and Batchelor were both former Coldstream Guards. Batchelor is said to have saved Nelson from suicide while they were both based at the Windsor Barracks. Nelson was appointed to do temperance work at Southwark and Lambeth police courts. Nelson was so successful in his work that once Batchelor was appointed, their work was extended to include Bow Street and Mansion House police courts. Following the first 2, the number of police court missionaries quickly increased, and they were posted to courts throughout London, with a national police court mission also developing. Police court missionaries, who came from numerous Christian denominations, not just the Church of England, gave advice and support to offenders based on Christian values of care and compassion. They helped offenders to keep their jobs, or found jobs for those who were out of work. In the 27th annual report of the London Diocesan branch of the Church of England Temperance Society, written in 1919, it was stated that missionaries aimed to prevent crime by helping offenders irrespective of any form of religion to which they may belong. The Temperance Chronicle on the 28th of January 1910 wrote, "From that time to this, there has been an unbroken record of steady progress, and now there are missionaries to be found in all the metropolitan police courts, with their daily list of tragedies, their endless tales of vice and misery, their never absent testimony to the great need for practical, Christ-like rescue work. However, it was not just men who were police court missionaries. The British Women's Temperance Association, abbreviated to the BWTA, and known today as the White Ribbon Association, after the white ribbon brooches their members wore, recognised the need for women in both the courts, police stations and prisons. The BWTA was founded in 1876, the very same year that Frederick Rayner sent a 5-shilling donation to the Church of England Temperance Society. In 1890, Lady Henry Somerset, a Methodist, was elected BWTA president. Lady Somerset advocated the need for female police court missionaries. The BWTA believed it was best for women to help women. They did not believe that male police court missionaries could adequately help women brought before the courts or in prison. This wasn't a criticism of the hard work of the male missionaries, but a recognition of the fact that men would not be able to fully understand and empathise with a woman's needs. This could be a woman's needs as a homemaker, trying to provide enough food for her family, or a woman who may be facing a difficult home situation. Female missionaries spoke directly with female prisoners. They knew alcohol did not discriminate between social classes. They helped prostitutes and servants, school teachers, and the wives of clergymen, officers, doctors, and merchants. In 1897, the BWTA provided this explanation of their work of the Police Court Missions Department. It is, in brief, to visit women and girls in the cells of the police court prior to their examination before magistrates, to stand by them during that examination, and afterwards to help them by getting them to sign the pledge, placing them in homes, restoring them to friends, meeting them as they came out of prison, just acting a sister's part towards a sister in misfortune. One BWTA police court missionary was Primitive Methodist Frances Storr. Born Frances Maris in Ryby, Lincolnshire in 1861. She was the daughter of a shepherd and a seamstress. Storr worked as a servant up until the age of 20 and only learnt to read and write when she was 20 years old. In 1903, she moved to Hexthorpe, Doncaster, Yorkshire, where her husband, Robert Woodhouse Storr, became the caretaker of the local Primitive Methodist chapel. Frances Storr was actively involved in both the life of the Primitive Methodist chapel and police court missionary work in Doncaster. Now, I just need to briefly mention an important point in the timeline of the Probation Service's history, and this was the 1907 Probation of Offenders Act, which was passed by the Liberal government under Prime Minister Sir Henry Campbell Bannerman. This act gave police court missionaries, who up until that time had been volunteers from various temperance and Christian charities and denominations, official status as probation officers. Courts could now suspend the punishment of an offender if they spent 1 to 3 years under the supervision of a probation officer. Magistrates could also appoint women to look after female offenders and children. The government agreed that police court missionaries from various Christian charities could continue their work under the new probation system, making many of them the first probation officers. In 1938, the Probation Service became a public service under the Home Office. Now, the Whitechapel Primitive Methodist Mission opened in 1876, coinciding with Rayner's 5-shilling donation and the establishment of the British Women's Temperance Association. It initially opened as the Working Lads Institute and Home, frequently abbreviated to the WLI. I am going to use Whitechapel Mission and WLI interchangeably. The aim of the WLI was to help homeless lads in London's East End. Reverend James Thorpe, appointed by the Home Office, was Whitechapel Mission's probation officer in the 1920s to 1930s. The Whitechapel Mission also had another probation officer in the same decades, known in the documents held by the London Metropolitan Archive simply as Mr. Kinchin. The ethos of the WLI's probation work was to help everyone. They were a primitive Methodist organisation, but their, and I quote Reverend James Thorpe directly here, practice is to put cases under the officers attached to the courts, irrespective of any denominational distinction. Thorpe also stated, though officially we represent nonconformity, actually we try to meet the need of probation work as may be required, irrespective of any label. The documents that the London Metropolitan Archive hold reveal quantitative data regarding the number of court cases the WLI dealt with. An example for just 1 year, the year November 1928 to November 1929, they dealt with 36 cases. These included cases at metropolitan courts throughout London. As can be seen here, this included 6 cases in Shoreditch, 2 at Lambeth, and 3 at Stratford. They also helped with cases in provincial courts outside London, including 3 in Ipswich, 3 in Luton, and 2 in Gravesend. The record also states that of the people they helped in that year, 1 was nonconformist, 2 were Roman Catholic, and 2 were Jewish. The document also details the cases where the cases they helped were sent to, meaning where they found jobs for these lads on probation. This included 10 people sent to farms, 8 into the army, 5 or 6, the source is slightly distorted on this number, to restaurants, 4 to warehouses, and only 4 people were returned as unsuitable, meaning they did not settle into their jobs. Interestingly, the list detailing the jobs found is entitled disposals, which appears to be language used by probation officers in the 1920s to 1930s, because it certainly does not fit the WLI's style of work. They were strongly committed to aftercare work with their lads on probation. In addition to these court visits, the WLI visited prisons and borstal institutions. Mr. Kinchin's report for the year ending 31st of March 1930 shows their commitment to lads on probation and to aftercare work. Kinchin states that they knew many of the lads they helped had difficult backgrounds. For example, a lad from North London, whose father had taken the boots off the lad's feet to pay for alcohol, had then thrown him out of the house. Kinchin emphasised that to cleanse, reclothe, and give them a respectable appearance is in itself a heavy and costly task. To feed, house, care for, and find suitable employment adds much more. But no matter the cost, Kinchin and Thorpe knew all this work was essential, and that, once lads had been returned home or sent to employers, regular employer and home visits would need to be made. Kinchin believed that this aftercare work was necessary if we were to complete the work of rescue. Thorpe and Kinchin would also contact clergy and others in the areas to which lads were sent for work in order to build support networks for the lads. Many lads were sent to farms in Devon, with Kinchin making regular trips from London to check up on them. This ensured that the lads did not feel forgotten. One lad who was sent to Farway, not far from Honiton in Devon, and known in the documents simply as GP, a common practice to just use the initials for anonymising those on probation, wrote to the WLI to thank them for their help. Thank you for the clothes and boots. I am getting on well with Mrs. B and family. I think they are well pleased with me. I have joined Farway Church Club, so I'm well interested each evening. I want to thank you for all the help you gave me when nobody else would. And the capitalisation is original to the document that I found in the London Metropolitan Archives. In the 1920s, the Whitechapel Mission began to recognise the need to extend the probation work they were doing. They knew they needed a hostel, which would be a home in every sense for the lads under our care. The WLI in London had good facilities, but these did not make it an ideal home. In 1939, the Windy Ridge Hostel for friendless and delinquent boys opened in the Essex countryside. The estate the hostel was based on was given to the WLI by a Mrs. Margaret Atherton following the death of her husband. Her husband had wanted to help the WLI ever since Thorpe had brought a group of lads to their estate on a camping trip. And Mrs. Atherton saw the donation of the estate following her husband's death as the best way to fulfil his wish. Probation officer Reverend James Thorpe took what we may consider quite a modern view about the benefits of countryside on mental health, stating, "For some lads, country life with fresh air and outdoor work are necessary to rehabilitation." From early in its existence, Windy Ridge gained the approval of the Home Office, who only a year before the hostel had opened, had assumed official control of the Probation Service as a public service. The hostel also received acclamation from judicial, magisterial, and police officials, with the Probation Service regularly calling for the assistance of Windy Ridge. Windy Ridge consisted of an 8-acre estate, a house, a bungalow, workshops, and 6 piggeries. Windy Ridge also provided lads with the opportunity to learn various skills. These included gardening, in particular growing fruit, vegetables, and flowers, as well as poultry and pig farming, and milking a cow, which they had on site to provide fresh milk for the hostel. The Probation Journal, the official publication of the union, the National Association of Probation Officers, wrote in their September 1939 issue that the opening of Windy Ridge may well prove to be an important step in the development of probation. Probation officers had been urging the need for country hostels for lads on probation, and the Whitechapel Mission was a pioneer in taking this forward. Now, having covered the historic development of the Probation Service and its connections to primitive Methodism in particular, I just want to highlight some of the work of the Probation Service today. The commitment of the police court missionaries to helping those brought before the courts through Christian care and compassion can still be seen in the Probation Service today. However, from just 2 police court missionaries in 1878 The Probation Service now employs over 21,300 people. The Probation Service continues to help people on probation to tackle substance misuse, including alcohol consumption. The Probation Service also protects the public and victims by supporting and challenging offenders to change their lives and move away from crime. Multi-agency public protection arrangements, abbreviated to MAPA, enable the Probation Service to work with prisons, the police, local authorities, and the NHS to reduce reoffending. Approved premises, formerly hostels like Windy Ridge, continue to play a crucial role, providing a temporary but stable base from which offenders can access services that help them to find work, receive support for substance misuse, and work on behaviours linked to reoffending. Research has shown that without access to stable accommodation upon release, prison leavers are almost 50% more likely to reoffend. In 2020, the National Faith Partnership Framework launched, enabling the Probation Service to work with faith communities. Offenders can now complete their community payback being work within the community, such as litter picking. They can complete this on different faith premises, for example, at churches, gurdwaras, mosques, and synagogues. And they can also receive support for their own personal faith journey. The Probation Service today is made up of employees of many faiths and none. Thank you for listening, and I hope that has provided you with an increased knowledge of the links between the Probation Service, Primitive Methodism, and other Christian denominations, as well as bringing your attention to a rather unsung civil service. Once again, you can access the Root and Branch WordPress website through the on-screen QR code or through the link at the bottom of the screen. Thank you.